Hello and welcome to Shought Thorts, the bite-sized interview show where I ask your favourite people in the gaming industry a bunch of somewhat silly questions. My name's DC Bradshaw, and my guest today is Taylor Navarro. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okie doke. Well, let's dive in then. Question one. For those who don't know you, could you please describe the creative thing or things you do, but only using words of one syllable?
Okay, so I write games, spell check games, lead groups to make games, and when I want to, I play games on screen.
I'm very, very impressed. Even the people who are prepped generally give a kind of caveman answer.
I loved English lit when I was in school, so like the second I saw this question, I was like, yes, I will prepare and it's going to be perfect.
Well done. That's the biggest hurdle. So let's go for something sillier. If you were a pirate captain, what would be the name of your ship?
The name of my ship would be The Sway.
Hmm.
And there's a reason for this, and it goes back to the first D&D campaign that we ever completed. We started all as mercenaries on this ship called The Sway. And long story short, we ended up taking over after the captain, who knew nothing about leadership or boats. He was just basically just like a money figure. There were like over 100 of us on the ship, and he let us die in the name of trying to find this super powerful artifact. But then my group realized he wasn't very good at being a leader, and so we offed him and took over. To be fair, it was mainly his greed that killed him. He picked up a cursed artifact and he succumbed to it. I have such fond memories because that was the beginning of the first D&D campaign that I ever completed that ran for 4 years.
When you started out, it's like, is it going to be the standard D&D group thing of, oh, there's a boat and we are having that boat? But no, it sounds like, he definitely had it coming.
To be fair, the Sway crashed very, very recently after we got it. It was an airship. It wasn't just a water ship.
Oh.
And the main villain came and like basically cut the engines and it fell from the sky.
Oh no.
And we had to save as many of the surviving mercenaries as possible. But it's okay because I was an artificer at the time and I invented parachutes in the world that we were living in because I was like, hey, if something bad happens, we're all gonna fall from the sky, and I only know feather fall like once. So I'm gonna have a failsafe. Unusual, but I like it.
All right then. So what's your favourite mindless fun popcorn movie?
I don't do mindless fun. I do big feelings or I go home. That said, if I just want to watch something that I really want to watch, I watch Into the Spider-Verse, the first movie.
Hmm.
It will give me big feels, but like in a way that kind of feels like safe to have those big feelings because I have them routinely because anyone can put on the mask and that gets me every time.
It's a good film. And I think it falls into, as you say, it's not mindless fun, but it's a comfort feel of a movie. You can just watch it whenever.
Yeah.
Good shout. I like that. Going back to fantasy then, if you could have a miniature version of a mythological or fantasy creature as a pet, what would it be?
This was the hardest question because I have a dog. His name is Zeus and he's a big boy. So it's like, well, what pet could I have that would be small but strong enough to like stand its ground with my playful American Akita? And honestly, I would like a miniature owlbear, please.
Yes.
Have you seen the plushies by, I think it's Metalby Games? When I first went to Big Bad Con, I promised my daughter a gift and I got the snowy owlbear plush and brought it home. And then when I went back in 2023, I got one for my son because he kept stealing his sister's one.
I think everyone who's a D&D fan had loved owlbears for a long time, but then BG3 came along and it's like, now we can see one, now we can pet it.
I've never played Baldur's Gate 3. I don't plan to. I like Minecraft and I like Stardew Valley, but Baldur's Gate 3 is not for me. But can't you keep it as a pet?
Basically, yes. So there's two animals you can end up with a companion. So at one point you wander along, you find a dog and his master has sadly been killed, and you can offer, once you've finished grieving, I'll look after you. And that's Scratch the dog, who will come to your camp. And then there's a couple of different ways you can end up with an owlbear cub.
I love that.
There is an achievement called You Have Two Hands for a Reason, which is if you manage to pet them both at the same time.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And they fully implemented the Speak with Animals spell. So you can actually talk to the pair of them as you're petting them and giving them treats. It's amazing.
Okay, I've changed my personal stance on Baldur's Gate 3 for one specific reason.
It's a good reason.
I love it.
What's your favourite swear word or phrase that's not actually swearing?
Okay, I think you know this. I'm a bully parent. So basically anything that Bandit says during the show, when you know he wants to swear, booger beans is my favorite one.
Nice.
But biscuits is also like a very good, like a short and sweet pun intended, replacement swear.
And then you immediately think of all those wonderful moments, like the sleepy time one where they're refusing to sleep, and is it Bingo or Bluey is jumping across the landscape?
They do it together and like they end up kicking him out of the bed.
Yes.
That was like the most real depiction of what having two kids and trying to sleep is like. I watched it and I was like, this is hitting too close to home.
They are spectacular at that. The sheer number of episodes where it's like, oh, it's not just me.
You know, I have cried too many times at Bluey. I'm not afraid to admit it. They have come for me right in the feels. There are so many episodes, because we've always watched through Bluey episodes as a family. I have just kind of sat back in the sofa, so that way no one can see like the tears streaming down my
Oh,
face. And in fact, we finished watching this 30-minute Bluey episode, and my daughter turned to me, she's like, Mummy, why are you crying? I'm not ashamed. They're good show writers.
they are. They know what they're doing. And long may it continue. Long may it continue. If you had to sing a Disney song at karaoke, what would you choose?
Again, one of the toughest questions that you put in this list. My current favorite Disney song is At All Costs from Wish, but that's not really like a karaoke one.
Hmm.
And I had to go through my like songs on Spotify to see what Disney songs are under there. And I was like, well, Hamilton's technically on Disney, but my choice is actually Surface Pressure from Encanto. Encanto, very important movie to me personally. I'm not Colombian, I'm Puerto Rican, but just seeing like that kind of extended family unit and people who looked like me in a Disney film was still like very important to me. And the messaging, there's no like big bad evil guy. It's like the conflict in the narrative comes from family disharmony and generational trauma, which is something that I have like personally kind of experienced.
Okay.
And like Louise's song Surface Pressure, when I first heard it, again, I don't cry often, but I'm an empathetic crier, I think is the right term.
Yeah.
My sister heard the song and messaged me and she was like, Taylor, did you ghostwrite this song? I was like, no, but it was a lot of people felt it at the same time. It was just like the pressure of being the one that your family kind of relies on to be strong to handle
Hmm.
things. At the time, it was a lot of what I had been feeling as an eldest daughter of a like mixed race household.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I was going to do karaoke, I've listened to it enough times that I don't cry anymore, but it is still quite an important song to me. And it's a bop too. But important caveat, you'll never hear me sing it at karaoke because I can't carry a tune to save my life. And I respect everyone around me too much to even attempt karaoke.
If you could have a magical item to make your day-to-day life just a little bit easier, what would it be?
Okay, so I went on D&D Beyond and I had a look
Ah,
through a bunch of magical items because I had something very specific in mind. This comes from my real life want of having a Roomba. Essentially, I want like a wand and I can pass like prestidigitation or unseen servant and have somebody help me magically clean because I hate cleaning and my life would be so much easier if I didn't have to hoover the floor 3 times a day with 2 kids and a dog.
yeah. I think, yeah, that combination, absolutely. The amount we had cats, and it was there's just cat hair everywhere. Doesn't matter how many times you clean, doesn't matter how many times you wash it, somehow there is ginger hair on everything. Even stuff that is unreachable, there's hair.
Because like they shape and then it flies and then it kind of settles. And I'm short as well. I'm only 5'2" and I have high shelves and I can't reach. But if I could just point a wand and know that it cleans like a 5-foot cube,
Bing.
I was like, it would take so little time. And then I could spend more time like playing with my kids, following creative pursuits, just vibing. So that is the magic item that I want, please.
I like that.
Can we make this happen?
I'll keep an eye out for the Kickstarter for that one. I think it'll do very, very well.
Definitely.
Okay, maybe going a bit more serious with this, but we'll see. What's a book that you think everyone should read?
Oh no, I refuse to be serious about this because
Excellent.
the things that you prefer to read fiction wise, which is what my mind goes to because I enjoy reading fiction. Everyone's tastes are different, and I'm not going to force my opinions on other people. However, it's not non-fiction, it's not fiction, it's semi-fiction. And this is The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks.
Ah, okay.
Hear me out. I thought COVID was going to be our best chance for zombies, and it didn't happen. That's not to say it won't happen. We could still get it.
Hmm.
I read this before I read World War Z, which is the fiction book that kind of implements like the tips in here.
Yeah.
The 2 tips that I remember the most are when you realize something's wrong, put the plug in and run the bath and destroy the stairs. or barricade the stairs if you can't destroy them, right? Because if the water stops working, you've got a bathtub full of water, because hydration is really important. You need water more than you need food. And then in the case of zombies, or really like any invading force, if you destroy the stairs, they can't climb up to get you.
Yeah. No, that's a good shout.
And you've got the high ground. That advice has stuck with me through all of my daydreams, through all of my TTRPG playing. It's not 100% serious, but also there are some
Yeah.
kind of good things in there that are maybe worth sticking with you.
I'm now slightly worried that when lockdown was called, you were there immediately running the bath and going at the stairs with like an axe or something.
Okay, so when lockdown first happened, I don't speak to my dad anymore. He called me and he was like, make sure you have like the mini bottles of alcohol, because you can always trade with a functioning alcoholic if things go poorly and you can't access something you need.
Okay.
And it was the most bizarre advice in an apocalypse scenario, which this wasn't. This was just a pandemic. I get it. And that's something I'm probably going to use in a TTRPG game.
All right. What's the creative thing you've made or done that you're most proud of?
There is a trio of things that I wrote last year and the year before about like my experience with parenthood and being a child. So the first one is a D&D encounter in Encounters in the Radiant Citadel called Rosy Tinted Glasses, where you have to help an NPC whose mother has died and become a diseased skeleton, but she believes that she's been reincarnated as an olvidado, which is part of like the D&D lore. And you have to help her through this grief while her mother is attacking innocent civilians, and kind of keep her safe and like deal with the threat and be empathetic as you watch a woman grieving. The next one is a one-page game called Dice of Life, which was not designed to be played at all. And it was me venting about the repetitive nature and the lack of support that I personally have as a parent. So every day you start with 3 energy die and you have 4 tasks that you need to complete. It uses Caltrop core, so 1 is a failure, 2 is a partial failure, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's designed in a way that you don't win, because when you roll over to the next day, things can happen. Like if you have a critical failure, you lose an energy die for the next day.
Okay.
So you're more likely to fail again. And it's that kind of repetitive cycle of struggling with parenthood. And then the final one is Family Album, which is a game about the proof of mom concept. Primary caregivers are often responsible for creating memories and then recording memories and don't show up in them. So you'll see videos or photos of people with their children, but often the person responsible isn't in the photos. So when you look back at the photos of your childhood, you don't see your mother or primary caregiver there.
Yeah.
And it's like they weren't there at all when they were the one taking the photo, because you don't always remember who took the photo. And that was a game I made about my grief of not being recorded in the history of my children, and also the grief that I felt because I looked through my own childhood photos and the same concept applies. My mother's barely in them.
Yeah.
And so all of these 3 games, grief, parenthood, childhood, I submitted to the Diana Jones Award, and I am one of the emerging designer Diana Jones Award winners of 2024.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
I just did it because a friend recommended that I did it, and I won. They're sponsoring for me to go to Gen Con to go pick up my award.
That's incredible. That really is. I've only played one of those 3. I play tested Family Album, and that was brilliant. I didn't know what to expect going into it, and even though I only played it for like 20 minutes, it was a very emotional 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I need to check out the others, but even from that snippet and from what you described there, I think rightly deserved, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Last question then. Could you please tell us your favorite inoffensive, groan-worthy dad joke?
Where did the baker stay on holiday?
I don't know.
At a bread and breakfast.
Oh no, that's terrible and wonderful. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
And on that note, thank you so much for your time. If folks have enjoyed these insights into the brain of Taylor Navarro, where can they find you on the internet?
Twitter, I'm at TaylorAnnNX on Twitter. You can find me on Tumblr if you want to see my more fangirly side. There is a way to find me, but I'm making it a scavenger hunt. So if you're interested in like my silly jokes, go find it. You'll figure it out.
There you go. A challenge for you, dear listener.
So I'm laying down the gauntlet.
And thank you out there for watching and or listening to this. I'm DC Bradshaw, and this has been Short Thoughts with Taylor Navarro. Hope you have an amazing day. Take care.